I was nearly killed by my dentist. There was equal bits negligent administration of Valium, a heavy sedative, and equal parts not really giving a shit. They messed up and gave me over triple the dose I should have had, and then some Benadryl on top of that when I had my wisdom teeth removed. I was unconscious, and apparently when overdosing on sedatives eventually your brain stops telling your lungs to work. So then there was a rush to get my wisdom teeth out before they would actually do something about the fact I wasn't breathing on my own. So they jammed a drill into my jaw so hard it cut a nerve. Side of my nose still goes numb. Once they actually got the breathing thing under control, being intubated sucks. When you wake up, imagine the worst strep throat of your life. I woke up like 3 days later. Would have sued, but the practice went out of business very quickly afterwards. When I was like 11 I was playing in my bike with a bunch of friends. At that time in me hometown there was this field where cows and horses rolled chill that was owned by an elder couple. Well, I was biking at full speed, and I brake just before hitting a horse, pregnant, that was way off the field and into point the street. I guess she panicked and starts chasing me. I fucking panicked, tried to get away, but I fell sideways on the grass facing the sky and the horse just jumped me. His back legs landed inches of my head. I remember the shake in my entire body and seeing his belly. I was fucking pale and went home. Tell my fathers and they were in shock too. It took me a long time to not fear horses anymore. Not me but my aunt. She lives in a small rural town in the middle of some hills covered by the woods. She was carrying some leaves in a wheelbarrow. She usually just throws them over the cliff, which goes down 100 or 200 meters into the woods below. Well, the wheelbarrow fell off and got caught in some tree branches. She wanted to retrieve the damn thing on her own and tried to reach it, but she lost her footing and fell down. Somehow she grabbed a branch and stopped her descent and climbed back up. Not exactly an exciting story like the other ones, but that's how my aunt almost killed herself over a wheelbarrow. Basically my whole life, I started having severe mental health problems at the age of 4 and was often mute and nearly catatonic. If I had been born even 15 years earlier I would have been institutionalized, possible had a lobotomy, and suffered all sorts of abuse. My life was headed down a very terrible path, where I likely would have died at a young age, but my mom remarried when I was 12 and my dad completely changed my life path. At 13 I attempted suicide by overdose and only survived because I was woken up for school the next day. I wasn't breathing when I was found, so just a few more minutes and I wouldn't be here. I've had some struggles with drugs and alcohol and have nearly aspirated on my own vomit a few times. I still have frequent suicidal ideation and have checked myself into the psych ward 3 times for it. Right now I'm doing alright. I'm in therapy and I'm taking my medications regularly, but I consider every day I have as me surviving. Edit, spelling/grammar. Don't know if this counts, but my mom and I got into an accident a while ago. We were hit head on by an old man who didn't see us as he was turning onto another road. I just remember being hit and then the airbags went off and my ears popped. Everything went into slow mo. My mom was shaking me, but I couldn't make sense of anything. The car caught on fire and the ambulance came. After, I fell out of the car and people helped me up. Thankfully I was okay, and so was my mom, but my shoulders hurt really bad for the next couple of months. Felt like I was in a permanent shoulder shrug. Shit was scary. So, I've had a heck of a life so far. I've had a drug problem or 2, had guns pulled on me, been in car accidents, was told by a doctor I had cancer. It turned out it wasn't, but for about 2 months I was terrified, and I used to live in South Cali's dock neighborhoods. The closest I ever came to death was 2 years ago. I was riding a bicycle, not a motorcycle, and crashed. Sun was in my eyes when the trail turned, tire went off of the tarmac, crash. I braced myself with my arms, but for about 30 seconds I thought I'd landed on my face. I was convinced my nerves were dead and my face was hanging off. I was so badly panicked it took me about 2 minutes to realize that my left arm was visibly broken. With the rest of the stuff I'd been though, it's odd to me that my freaking bike crash is the closest to a I survived story I have. I fell 45 feet from a stage ladder when I was in the 8th grade. was on the stage crew, and it was the first time we climbed the ladder to the 60-foot high catwalks above the stage. I was the first to climb down, and instead of closing my hands on each rung on the way down, I shifted my hands to the upright rails on the side. I guess my hand slipped off the rails, and the next thing I knew I was falling. I had enough time to look down, then to look back up when I hit. Luckily, I first hit a big sheet metal air duct that was about 12 feet off the concrete floor. I crushed the air duct, but I guess it was like a big collapsing cushion for me. Then I fell from that and landed on the angle iron curtain weight rack. Bent that too. Ended up with broken ribs, collapsed lung, very painful, broken arm and broken nose. The first thing I did when I caught my breath was to wiggle my toes. They still worked, and I figured I was going to be okay. Paramedics arrived quickly, and they scared me the most. Said I was going into shock, assumed some serious injuries, and got me to the hospital fast. I spent 3 to 4 days in the hospital to make sure I didn't have internal injuries, then a week at home. Was really sore all over for a while, but no long-term problems at all, and was back at school the next week. They called me the skydiver. That was decades ago. I'm still thankful every day for surviving that fall, and I feel very lucky for not breaking my back or worse. I don't take any sunrise for granted. The worst day is still a gift. When you thought you were going to die, that's actually the best part of the whole deal. I just appreciate little things, and whenever I get irritated or down about something, I think about how blessed and lucky I am. Life can suck, but it can also be really cool, often at the same time. I left school at 4 o'clock to go to work one day, and once I turned on my road to work, I fell asleep behind the wheel. What woke me up was my tire running off the road. Well, the car really. It did a bump and woke me up. As soon as my eyes opened, my car was heading straight to a concrete driveway. I hit it head on, and it sent my car flying in the air. It happened in like 4 seconds, but it felt like minutes. Once the car landed, it started to roll. It kept rolling until I hit a fire hydrant, which didn't break. A man saw my car in the air and come out to help me. It landed upright, and I was in shock. It felt like a dream. The man came to the window and asked if I was okay. I took my hands off the wheel and told him to wait. I looked around and saw that my vents were smoking, so I turned the car off and threw the keys. Then I touched a broken piece of my window. It shattered, and that's when I realized I was in a car accident. I tried opening the door, but it was broken. The man walked around my car and told me to crawl out to the passenger side. I started to crawl and saw my phone light up in this pile of glass. I picked it up and brushed it off. Once I finally got out, I instantly hugged the man who helped me. He kept comforting me and telling me that I was alive. Funny thing about the accident, it was right next to my workplace. Once the man checked me and said I looked fine, I went inside the gym. I work at a gym, and told my bosses what happened. I was excused from work that day. Once the adrenaline left, I could feel the pain and glass in my body. I also noticed blood on my arms. Don't how, but there it was. My family got there, and I went to the hospital. They said I was fine, and I went back home. To be honest, I don't know how I survived. They said I rolled 3 times, and I walked out with only glass in my eye, arms, and knee. It wasn't really a hardcore survival story, but it was an unforgettable experience for me. I once went snowmobiling with a group in Norway. That day was the first day of the midnight sun, but since the weather wasn't good, so they changed the original route. The guide is a young woman in her early 20s, whom I assume is experienced in snowmobiling, but inexperienced in handling situations like this. So she picked a spot where we had to go up and down the hills a lot without making sure if everyone was okay with it. I'm a person who's afraid of heights and was new to snowmobiling, so that's a horrible combo. Since we went in a single file line and I was the last one, upon reaching a hill I seriously wanted to stop, but since I couldn't stay behind I just soldiered on. Before the hill, there was a tiny slope where you had to drive faster in order to reach the top, because the slope was actually steep despite the size. Of course, being anxious and inexperienced, I wasn't going fast enough, and I fell off the snowmobile in the middle of the slope, and it fell onto my leg. My leg went numb immediately, and I hurt my hip. but fortunately it was all snow on the ground, so the impact was not that bad. I was able to stand up with some effort, but I couldn't drive at that moment. Being the last person in the line, I was left there, watching everyone, including my husband, going on the hill without a clue that I was left behind. Even though it was super quiet, their snowmobiles were loud enough and no one was able to hear me yell. I wasn't scared in the beginning, because I knew they would eventually come back for me. As I looked around, there was nothing as we were in the Arctic Circle. No plants, nothing, just white everywhere. Then I started to freak out and feel cold as I saw them reach the top and disappeared and it started snowing. It wasn't until another 20 minutes I saw the guide starting to come down the hill and look for me. I was waving like crazy. That was probably the best thing I had ever seen in my life, and that was also the longest, loneliest 30 minutes I had ever felt. When I was visiting my friends, we took a trip to walk around and got hit by heavy rain. We still had fun, but I decided to walk ahead of them because we were in the forest and I was young, so plenty of energy. At some point I slipped because apparently there was a hill that went down to a creek that I didn't see. The flow of water kept carrying me away and down to the bottom. I tried to swim up and get some air, but the flow kept on sinking me. I managed to get to the side and grab onto a steady stick which I used to climb out of the water flow. So here I'm still breathing. A car once hit me when I was a child. The hit was in the middle of my forehead and the driver ran away. I stood up and started walking home without realizing what just happened. In the middle of the way, I felt warm liquid coming down from my head. I touched it and looked at my hand and said, "Oh blood," and started crying. Somehow one of my neighbors found me and carried me home. I was lying in bed for some hours. I probably passed out, since I don't remember this part, until my father came back from work and took me to hospital. To this moment nobody knows why nobody called for ambulance, but anyway I'm alive and functioning for now, with a star on my forehead to remind me of that accident. So yeah, I survived, I guess. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more daily 6 PM Reddit uploads.